Cargo. Happy to have you all. My name's Rachel. We have Courtney here, and we have some good guest speakers that I will kind of introduce right now for you. So we have Ben Schwingle. He was here last week, so we're happy to have him back. And then we also have Sean Vaughn, who is also going to offer some insights. He is our operations manager here at Interlog. So here's some lovely photos of the gentleman. So kind of go into our agenda today. We have a lot to talk about, so it's some exciting stuff. But before I get into that, we do have a Q&A that we do at the end. I just want to let you guys know that it's on the lower hand of your screen. Please put in some questions as we go along. We'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. But agenda for today, we're going to talk about cross-docking and tracking on the rail, offer some insights as to what we're seeing currently, procuring high volume space, kind of showing you some insights of how Interlog is doing it and kind of a good visual of what's going on in the industry today. We also will be talking about rail versus transload, some time frames, what we're seeing as far as number of days that it takes between the two, drayage capacity, East versus West Coast. We'll touch on some examples of what they're seeing currently in the industry, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with some air freight and some good examples and lanes that they're seeing different things happening. So without further ado, Sean, Ben, I'll let you take it from here, and we'll kind of go into some cross-docking and tracking on the rail.
Thank you, Rachel. I just want to describe what each of our roles are at the company. I'm the International Operations Director, which means my responsibilities are overseeing the team, but most of my focus is on routing and rates, relationships with our foreign partners. So I think today I'll be touching mostly on those aspects and leaving more of the operational activities that are involved in the importation through the airports and the ports. I'll leave that to Sean, because he has far more intimate knowledge than I do. Starting with cross-docking.
Yeah, so like Ben kind of said, I obviously the operations manager, so we're doing the day-to-day activities of strongly focused on import, but also covering the export side of things as well. One of those being obviously the cross-docking and this tracking on the rail. Obviously, one big thing we're seeing is there's a lot of delays with cargo loading the rail, as well as the struggle to secure space to inland destinations on the rail. Further delays created at origin as well as at destination. So one solution we've kind of started to come up with is we will stop the container or route the container to a port such as Los Angeles, Seattle, Oakland, and then we will have our local warehouse in that area pull the container, and then also bring the cargo back, unload it from the ocean container, reload it into a truck, and then bring it to you that way. What this kind of allows us to do is it allows us to control the way the cargo is delivered. For instance, if it comes in not on pallets in the ocean container, but the final delivery needs it to be palletized, this allows our warehouse to palletize the cargo as they unload it. And then when it is delivered, it is on those pallets already. Another way that this kind of assists is with big volume loads, such as it kind of the example shows, if you brought in 6 ocean containers, you'd be able to consolidate that into fewer trucks in most cases based on just how it's packaged and everything else. So not only would it save time, as mentioned, plenty of delays with cargo loading the rail itself, but also could be able to better optimize palletizing the cargo sooner, and then at that final destination, it's already palletized. One other thing about this is it is much easier to predict the timeline of the cargo being delivered with the cross-docking, because it would get pulled from the port, it would get put into that truck, and then it would be trucked in just a couple of days, as opposed to waiting and seeing what the ports are doing with how long they're taking to load these containers on the rail. and then also these containers being stopped along the way due to congestion.
Yeah, Sean, I wanted to also mention, because you're talking about delivering it the way the customer needs it. Those fulfillment by Amazon orders, we take floor loaded cargo, put it onto grade A pallets, wrap it, pallet flags on the corners to the specific height limitations of those FBA facilities, or any other customer that has a specific request for that type of palletization.
Yep, absolutely. So if you need it to be a certain height or like a certain type of pallet or wrapped a certain way, then this does allow us to the shipper to ship it whatever way they're able to, and then also for the warehouse at destination to fulfill these needs and possible regulations for different delivery facilities across the country.
From a routing standpoint, it's really optimal because we can get those bookings so much sooner, and we have the short trans-Pacific shipping time. Your team, and I think we'll probably touch on it later, is taking it from the seaport and into a 53-foot trailer within 6 days after arrival, right? Sometimes it takes 7, 8 longer time just to get onto the rail, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, it's much more predictable with these containers being able to pull right from the port and then go to a warehouse, load into a 53-foot trailer, and then delivered that way. Because yeah, as mentioned, we are seeing delays of containers sitting at the port just waiting to load the rail of up to 8 to possibly 10 days also.
Here's a map of our facilities, and that's a rail network map, kind of showing the complexity. But you mentioned something about delays upon arrival to the rail ramps too. So how does that work for the customers? And they're seeing an ETA to Chicago of November 1st, and then like a few days before that arrival, the actual ETA is continually pushed as the rail delays happen. Is that why I think we're pushing for the truck deliveries at a more precise ETA than the rail also?
Yep. So what we're seeing a lot of is, for instance, if the ETA was showing November 1st, a lot of times what's happening is these deliveries, these containers on the rail are coming in, and then they're getting near their destination. For instance, let's say 100 miles outside of Chicago, and then these trains are completely stopping or delaying further due to the rail congestion at these different rail depots. Especially, obviously, Chicago's a big example, Minneapolis, other rail depots pretty much everywhere in the United States currently. So even if that ETA showed November 1st originally and it loaded on time, it could still be delayed up to 5 to 7 days in some cases before this train would actually arrive in Chicago to allow for the delivery to occur. Obviously, with a truck, we're able to more precisely predict ETAs and give those updates as the truck moves, and it's also just a lot quicker overall.
The pricing standpoint, it's not much of a trade-off. I mean, it is a kind of trade-off where you have time and money, but with the high rates for inland rail moves, we see it's very similar cost to just ship it to a port, transload it or cross-dock it, and then make delivery by a full truck. And I think you told me the other day about the rail storage in some places too, Chicago and Memphis.
Yep. A lot of these places too, they're now lowering the amount of days you're getting free at these destinations. So not only are we waiting for it to arrive, but also when it arrives, it's very quick to come on that last free day. So obviously, reliable carriers help a lot, which is something that we're very proud of, that we deal with a lot of reliable carriers. However, in some cases, the rail storage is unavoidable with not being able to get chassis secured, not being able to get the drivers in there in time, other factors that lead to that rail storage, which adds up very quickly and is a very expensive thing that you can avoid just by simply choosing to do the trucking and the warehousing option at whatever port it goes into.
Rachel, I think it was back a slide you had the high volume booking capacity, right?
Correct. Yep. So here's the Procuring High Volume Space.
Any other questions? Any viewers right now? Maybe we'll just move on to this topic, which is a big deal right now as we're approaching the last couple of weeks of the pre-holiday season. Everyone's trying to move a lot of high volume, especially your garment retailers. Unfortunately, Ho Chi Minh City's factories have been shut down, and that's a large producer of garments and also furniture. But for the holiday season coming up, we're using a particular successful method that I think your picture here demonstrates the difference. There on the top, you have the large box companies like C.H. Robinson Expeditors that have a single office overseas in China that they rely on for booking, and they have to choose which customers get priority over each other according to their allotments from the carriers, versus freight forwarder like Interlog USA that we have 24 Chinese agents making bookings for us around the clock. And we have 5 or more in about every other country in the world, specifically Southeast Asia. And that's how we're moving for some customers, 50 to 100 containers still weekly out of those seaports to US seaports. So combination of agents, vessels, carriers, and managing it all here at our office. So our customers see it in one portal for online tracking all in one place, just like they would with C.H. Robinson or Expeditors. Not sure if there's anything else to touch on that, just besides the price. The price point is there's going to be a cost for what it takes to move the freight out this season. I think a lot of people have become aware of the increases over the last year. However, we are seeing, and maybe a lot of listeners are pretty keen on this, we're seeing far more signs that rates are stabilizing and even dropping, especially in certain ports. Capacity is opening up in Lianyungang, Qingdao, Xiamen, where we didn't have that last month. So for those that are really curious about rates, I would say we're probably at the tipping point now where it's going to start plateauing. A lot of that has to do with the holiday season coming to an end in the next 2 weeks, right up to Golden Week in China. That's all.
I will.
Are there any questions?
We'll do questions at the end for all of them. Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
So
Sure.
one major thing that we're going to kind of touch on is, and I kind of mentioned it with Chicago, but the drayage capacity on the east and west coast, obviously with how much freight is coming into the country, one of the major things that we have focused on is really building relationships and allowing for us to handle any capacity at any of these major ports. One of the major things that we've obviously been seeing is the smaller ports are not being utilized as much because either they're too congested or there's just not enough, mostly just congestion, and there's not enough efficiency there to be sending large amounts of cargo to them. But major ports such as obviously like New York, Norfolk on the East Coast, obviously Los Angeles, Oakland on the West, we've really focused on building those relationships to allow us to handle any capacity of drayage at these locations. Obviously, that comes with us being able to plan ahead and stay on top of getting these drayage providers the information they need in order to secure them to handle however many containers. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean like last minute stuff that we can always at the drop of a hat get a container out. However, with given the proper leadway and the system we have in place, it has allowed us to really just fall back on those relationships and have deliveries still go relatively smoothly, even with the market the way it is currently.
I've seen a lot more demand on the truckers to drive farther since we're avoiding the rail where we can, or the carriers aren't offering the IPI bookings inland to places like Atlanta. We have our Savannah and Charleston truckers driving the distances into northern Atlanta, northern Georgia and Tennessee before you would have booked it to Atlanta rail ramp.
Yeah, the capacity and the drivers, they are definitely going further than they have before. Obviously, occasionally in the past they would probably run some of these lanes, but as Ben mentioned, a lot of like Atlanta cargo prior is now going just directly to Savannah or Charleston, and then just being drayed into wherever the delivery location is. This allows for, as said on the West Coast earlier with the Los Angeles example, this allows us to deliver things quicker and not rely on bookings to these particular rail ramps to slow us down at getting something booked for a customer and then getting their freight on the water.
I think Dallas really highlights that example. There's almost no need to book inland through Los Angeles to Dallas anymore. When that was a 25-day transit, and it's just as cost effective as growing capacity to Houston, and our truckers just make those deliveries from Houston to Dallas all day long.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the insight, guys. And then we can kind of touch on some air freight conditions within the United States and flight options that you guys are seeing.
Well, this is going to become a bigger issue as we go past that last day for holiday rush sea freight departures, and we're prepared with our multiple agents in every Asian country to fly cargo into your major airports. Chicago has been troublesome for the last few months, so we have the option to fly directly into Chicago, but given large enough orders, we're already recommending some customers to fly to the West Coast ports directly, and we have dedicated trucks that will make the delivery throughout the US. I know it's attractive to have a direct flight to Chicago, but if a cargo is going to have to sit there for 7 days, you may have well just send it to Los Angeles and head on a truck the next day. Again, prices basically come out equal in the end, but a reliable timeline is the most important thing with this air freight. Speaking of which, if everyone's been in tune with the rates, it has been on the rise the last 2 months. A couple years ago, it was just a $3 to $5 per kilo from China. Now we're at $10 higher than that. That's almost to the COVID, let's call it 2020 levels, when costs were between $15 and $20 per kilo. Expect that to stay expensive in the next couple of months. And definitely consult with your forwarders on your routing options and the carrier departures. And it's not going to be a everyday departure, maybe just 1 or 2, 3 days a week. If your cargo is such a large size, it's going to have to be broken up over multiple flights. So just be aware of how you might want to break that up so you can receive one large order a third at a time, instead of trying to send it all at once. If the first third arrives to Los Angeles on a Wednesday, the next arrives on a Friday, and then the final third arrives on a Monday, all of it has to sit there until that Monday. So it's best to just work with your supplier, have 3 different bills of lading, smaller batches, and that way you can deliver the cargo 3 batches earlier in waiting. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Sean, as far as operationally, what you're seeing at the airport?
I think you did cover most of it. One major thing is, yeah, just that, like the Chicago example, it's very, it just seems the Chicago airports are very overwhelmed with the amount of air freight coming in, especially, and they're not as equipped to handle it as such as like a Los Angeles. So that is why that option to fly direct into Los Angeles or a different West Coast area and then have the dedicated truck it inland wherever it needs to go is likely the more predictable ETA and delivery option, as well as just the smoothest for how air freight has been trending recently.
Yeah, I should also mention you're going to want to work with a freight forwarder that has a local truck like we do at all these airports, which is about 45 medium and major airports in the United States. Hopefully someone is spending that type of money on air freight is choosing the one forwarder that has a reliable trucker, because they're not all truckers are the same. You need to find the ones that are going into the airports 3, 4, 5 times a day to collect cargo, not the low cost LTL big companies, which usually despise waiting at the airports, and they'll skip the airport. They'll stay for 20, 30 minutes and then leave. And that's just going to cost the customer when it comes to storage. Normally storage free time was 48 to 72 hours. In most places in the United States, it's now down to 24 hours. So you need to be working with a forwarder that has those local connections to grab the freight out of the terminal as soon as it becomes available.
Awesome. Well, Sean, Ben, do you guys have any last insights you want to offer on any of the topics before we get into some of the Q&As?
All right, well, I will hop into the question and answers. We have 4 questions that have been asked today. So in no order. The first question is, someone is asking, can you do multi-stops after transloading so they can completely skip the warehouse? Is that an option you guys are seeing?
Yeah, delivery direct to consumer, certainly. And depending on the requirements of the customer, we can label it and strip it of packing lists and commercial invoices that they don't want the final customer to see.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay, well, that was a simple answer. Thank you for that, Ben. The next question asked was, what kind of rates are offering for the trucking from the West Coast to the Chicago area?
Straight trucking, you're going to find it in the $8,000 range. We do work with quite a few different truck carriers. So depending on what they have available, we can always work with the customer to get a low price on that final delivery. But as a budgeting number, we've been recommending around $9,000 to dray it, cross-dock it, put it in a truck and get it to the Midwest.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. The next question, what are you guys currently seeing with the Ho Chi Minh and all of the lockdowns currently happening?
This is going on 7 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has changed much. Factories are still at about 10 to 20% productivity, and a lot of those are just outside of the Ho Chi Minh metro area.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is if you have a factory producing there, you're benefiting from rates that are $5,000 lower than shipping out of Haiphong in the north. You're still open. Big advantage there. Lots of space available with us from both ports, but of course from Ho Chi Minh, where the carriers are still calling that port. We do check in nearly every day to see if there's any change, and I would tell you that the forecast isn't good. So
I guess we'll just keep updated on that then. All right, and the last question, switching gears a bit here, but someone is wondering why it is taking so long to get vessel space to Australia.
space to Australia. Well, they have to be considering all the carriers that service Australia. There is a specific group of carriers that we work with direct routes, even avoiding the transshipment in Singapore, like a lot of them like to do. Their cost is in the $7,000 range from port to port, perhaps even $8,000, which is not attractive when you have someone like Evergreen or Yangming, for example, offering half that cost. But it's a 50-day transit via Singapore, and the earliest booking is in November. When things look good on paper, look too good to be true, they usually are. Need to push for more specifics of when will this actually be departing?
Right.
Which carriers are you using? And what route? So I would say it is a problem shipping to Australia. It's probably too much reliance on the wrong carriers based on just personal information.
Well, that is all the questions we have. Of course, if anyone else does have questions, you can feel free to contact us on those. But that does wrap up. Oh, we got one last minute one. Give me 1 second here. Someone wants to know what is happening in the transatlantic market.
The transatlantic?
Mm-hmm.
Similar conditions throughout the summer. There's a lack of containers available, specifically in North Europe. Out of Italy, we're seeing more capacity, but trucking rates are higher throughout Europe, and we've been put on a diet. So some customers needed 15 containers a week. We're now reduced to 5. And that's just across the board, regardless of the size of the carrier. Similar to what we do in Asia, we have many different agents in each of those European countries to boost our booking power. So it's like we're on a diet from 15 down to 5 containers, but we have 3 plates now. So we're trying to come back up with that 15 FEU per week.
Sounds good. All right, we did get one last minute question here, and then we'll wrap it up. But the last question is Brexit causing problems?
Problems? No, not problems. Certainly an advantage for our British partners. It would be like if Canada and the United States had an agreement where there was no customs clearance needed to cross the border. That's what Europe and UK had before. And suddenly there's duties and customs clearance needed, and a hold up inner Europe is required. So if anyone needs some introduction to European partners, we're happy to make that. Our British and European partners shipping back and forth in the United States aren't affected by Brexit, but we are seeing a boost in the amount of business with the UK already.
Sounds good. All right, well, that does wrap up all the questions that were asked today. If anyone does have additional ones, once again, feel free to let us know, but that wraps up our question and answers. Thanks for all your questions today.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Courtney. And then before we go, just want to touch on our next Coffee and Cargo. It's going to be Wednesday, October 20th. It will be in our newsletter for a link later today, and then in the following weeks, you'll be able to see those links come through. If you don't, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to send that link over. We would be happy to have you guys join next month. Ben, Sean, thanks for all the insights today, and have a great Wednesday.